Hi, good to see everyone again. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about humility and specifically the idea of clothing ourselves with humility. In other words, preparing ourselves, surrounding ourselves, being intentional, giving thought to the process, giving thought to how we're responding to circumstances and situations. Instead of letting our natural desire for competition, the natural desire to be first, the natural desire to uh, get the win, the natural desire to feel like we were satisfied. So let's talk about humility for just a minute. And I want to read to you from Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18. It's a verse that most of us are familiar with. We usually misquote it a little bit, but we get the idea. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. The idea there of a haughty spirit is the spirit that elevates itself. In other words, it's not a naturally occurring thing, but a planned and prepared thing. Now, most of us don't think about it that way. Most of us think that, as I just said just a moment ago, as we were starting this, that our natural desire is to win. And certainly our natural desire is to win, but we also have a natural desire to see others succeed as well. And so there becomes this internal preparation for humility that we have an opportunity to step into. And so humility puts us among those in need. One of the quotes I want to read to you out from James Hilt, and it is this: recognizing and then appreciating another person's strengths is difficult for the one who thinks that they must be number one. As a result of the described forces of pride, the proud see others as objects to be dominated, not as persons to be accepted, encouraged, and loved. They use others to reflect their own self-induced glory. Humility is a spirit of recognition where we see ourselves in the lives of others. In fact, we talked about it a few weeks ago about how we can see sometimes our own faults mirrored in others, but humility gives us an opportunity to see our struggles reflected in others. And it allows us to show empathy for the person, not sympathy in the sense that, oh, I hate it for them, but empathy as in, I understand and acknowledge what they are going through and what they are struggling with. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 12 says this: therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. That statement, to clothe yourself, means that we put it on. We think through it. We become intentional about it. We recognize what is happening in our lives, and it's an opportunity for us to identify where we are. It's an opportunity for us to step into God's grace that's happening at that moment. Not what we wish for, not the outcome that we're after, but God's grace that is present in the moment. There's a story in the scripture of Hagar and her son Ishmael, and they're sent away from Abraham and Sarah. And Hagar is out there, and she's crying out to God for relief for her child. And God answers her. And Hagar then calls God by a name, the God who sees. In other words, Hagar knew that God was present with her in that moment. And that is what clothing with ourselves in humility gives us the opportunity to see God's presence with us in each moment. And because of that, we have the opportunity to live in joy. Not the idea that we're going to get an achievement, not the idea that we're going to get what we might consider success, but we have this joy of knowing that God saw us in that place and in that moment. So, encourage myself today, to clothe ourselves with humility, to be intentional in our thought process as we consider what God is doing in our lives and the lives of others around us. God bless you all, and I'll see you next time.